I know you guys are used to perfectly scripted videos for myself with clips that match what I'm saying on the screen, but sometimes you just gotta rant, and today we need to talk about realism in football video games. Now, Boris made this tweet, and he says, I miss the old FIFA days. Arcade-style ping-pong, crispy left stick, and fast turns. I understand they must change things up year to year and perhaps make it more realistic, but I miss when it just felt like a game, unrealistic or not. Maybe I'm just getting old. You tell me. He then also adds, note, I like today's FIFA also, but I just had more fun in the old versions. So definitely, he's one of the lucky ones, because if you at least enjoy what you have, at least you can enjoy your gaming experience. For those like me, I absolutely have zero fun playing a game like Next Gen FIFA, which is why I'm on Old Gen, but today's video is not about that, especially because Old Gen FIFA is still so far off the mark of what a video game about football could be, but at the very least, it's playable compared to New Gen, which for me is completely unplayable. But to this tweet, as you could have seen earlier, I quoted it to start a discussion with my followers, and I said the game is gone, simple as. And that's to say, you know, with the whole hyper motion and the new gen, it's gone, man. We're never getting the FIFAs that we once used to have. The only hope is for new games to come out and hopefully create an arcadey, but more on that arcadey versus realism in a second. I also said, make no mistake though, the newer FIFAs are no more realistic than the old ones. There's more to realism than speed of the game. A fast game with no skill cancels, Trivela long shots, keeper movement, etc., because you could just add any gimmicky feature that FIFA has had in the last few years, is more realistic than whatever this is. And this is super important because I feel like the word realism and the word arcadey has been completely misunderstood, misrepresented within the space of gamers who play football video games. And this is what I want to discuss today, because I assure you that of those of you watching, if you're saying that you like FIFA 23 because it's realistic, you don't. You don't like it because it's realistic. You don't want realism. You don't know what you're talking about when you say that, and, you know, don't get offended, but it's just the truth, and I'm going to explain it in this video, because if you did like realism, then you wouldn't be playing FIFA. You'd be playing PES, eFootball, whatever it's called, because that's the most realistic simulation that you can play. Next Gen FIFA or Hypermotion FIFA, these FIFAs aren't more realistic just because, you know, the game is slower, you can turn less responsively. Maybe in that specific aspect, they're trying to emulate real football more, but there's much more to the game than that. Now you just have these games that are really slow, but they have extremely unrealistic features. You know, we can start listing them. A feature like keeper movement is not a realistic feature. You can think that it is, you can start fooling yourself that it is, but it isn't, because keepers in real life will not be able to move along the line as quickly as they do in FIFA. And to add to that, they wouldn't even ever do that, because when you play as a keeper in real life, there are certain fundamentals that you don't let go of. You know, you move alongside the ball and you will always guard the near post. But that's not the case in FIFA, because the way keeper movement translates in the video game of FIFA is that it leads to a lot of situations where, because of keeper movement, you get rewarded by leaving the near post to predict a shot on the far post. And that would never happen the way that it does in real life, that it does in FIFA. It's a completely unrealistic thing that gets added to add a skill gap. Does it add a skill gap? That's a different discussion. In my opinion, the net skill gap that it adds is not worth it. The skill gap that you add in terms of differentiating between someone good at keeper movement and someone bad is not worth it, because at the end of the day, it makes chances that should be easy a lot harder than they should, and that's the most important thing. Creating chances that are easy is a much bigger skill gap than letting someone get bailed out by keeper movement, which is a bailout mechanic. Another unrealistic feature, I don't know, canceling skills. How is it unrealistic? It's literally impossible, bro. You could say it adds to the skill gap. Okay, it adds a mechanical aspect to the skill gap, as in, yes, you have to be faster on your fingers and more coordinated. It's one of those things that, you know, it's not that difficult if you're already an elite division player. It differentiates more so like an elite division player from, I don't know, a silver player. The elite should probably be able to cancel skill moves more effectively, and then within the elite divisions, some people are going to be even more cracked than others, of course. But okay, let's just assume it adds a mechanical skill gap. So what? Okay? Is it that important? Because I don't think it is. A lot of the times, people who spam skill cancels, you know, they might be good and fast, but how good is it? Because if they were as good as people make it out to be, then they would be able to skill cancel much more accurately relative to the needs of the game. But there's a reason that when people go on skill cancel runs, a lot of the times, while they can't skill cancel 5, 10 times in a row, they might miss 4, 5, 6, 7 shooting opportunities. That is, they may have not realized that, oh, they didn't even need to do the last 5 skill cancels because they had about 3 times that they had the opponent on skates and they could have stopped and shot. But the reason they don't stop and shoot is because they actually aren't thinking about it as much as you think they are. It's more spam, 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 and then hope that once you've done stop spamming, your opponent is gone. If it was as controlled as people made it out to be, the immediate second that you create a spot or a spot to shoot or a space to shoot, you would stop, but you don't. Why? Because it's spam. So there's less thought process behind it and more of a mechanical skill gap that you spam, 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 and boom. That's it. I hope that was clear, but at the end of the day, it's not necessarily about realism, it's but what adds to the skill gap of the game, and it's where you fall. Personally, I fall under the umbrella of people who think that the game should be a user decision based game. It should be more about decision making and using quick thinking with efficient output, not spamming outputs, and combining that with visions and runs and blah, blah, blah. But another unrealistic feature, I don't know, timed finishing. I mean, it's realistic to assume that sometimes you hit the ball better than in other times, sure, but at the end of the day, it's still a gimmicky feature because the only way to make it worthwhile in a football video game is to make it so that if you do green it, then you are now able to score shots that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to. And this is a big, big problem because at the end of the day, shooting should be very, very simple. If you craft an open look, it should be at a higher percentage that it goes in. If you don't, then there's no reason that it should go in. Just because you timed a shot correctly shouldn't override things that come before it. For example, if I've blocked your shot, but you now green it, why are you now entitled to nutmeg me? It makes no sense. The same things that you've told that you guys have seen in my videos for years. All of this to say that, you know, the games nowadays with hypermotion and this, they might look more realistic, but in essence, they are not more realistic than the old ones because the pace of the game is slow. But the features within the games are completely gimmicky, completely unrealistic, and lead to a game that has nothing to do with football. You might say that the old FIFAs don't look realistic. It's not realistic to go at a certain pace. It's not realistic for things to go so end to end, even though it is more fun. But the implementation was a lot more realistic. If you look at the goals scored in pro tournaments back in the day, compared them to the last few years of FIFA, I mean, I sure as hell can tell you that the more realistic goals come from the more arcadey games, because although unrealistic in the pace at which the game unfolds, the games used to be more realistic in the features because you didn't have the arcadey gimmicks that are now added nowadays. So now FIFA tries to make both parties happy. They try to make the party of realism happy by making them turn slow, and they have no idea that the game's unrealistic because they don't even have the skill level to untap all these unrealistic features. And they try to make the pros happy by adding these completely gimmicky mechanics into the game so that there's some sort of skill gap differentiator, because there's nothing to separate players anyways between vision, passing, tackling, defending, and all this other stuff. All that stuff has been completely leveled out to the ground. There's no more skill gap. You need other things to create a skill gap, and that is these unrealistic features. So when people say that the new FIFAs are realistic and the old ones are unrealistic, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about, to be honest with you, just to be completely frank. It makes no sense to me. They're both arcadey as hell, just in different ways. The old ones were arcadey in terms of pace, but they were realistic in terms of features and implementations and the ways that goals were scored. The new ones might be realistic in terms of pace, but they're completely unrealistic in terms of features, they're completely unrealistic in terms of the most efficient ways to score, and they're completely unrealistic in terms of the decision making that you would take. And finally, on top of that, the whole concept of realism versus not realism is just so misrepresented because, and this is why I said, you guys don't want realism, because you guys want VAR. I mean, maybe some of you guys want VAR. Do you guys want handballs? Those are realism. Do you guys want nutmegs? I mean, is it realistic to have a shot go through my leg if I blocked it perfectly? It is realistic, but that doesn't mean that it should be in the game. And I never said that I wanted a realistic game, because I get a lot of people, why don't you play next gen? It's a lot more realism. It's not. It's not realism. I want a game that is fair and competitive. And I'm not saying it's easy to make one, because you have to know what you're talking about to decide what fits into that equation, what makes the game more competitive, and what should be taken out of the game to make it more competitive, right? Because something like a nutmeg needs to be limited as much as possible for the sake of competitive and for the sake of pushing a game that is user decision based and less RNG based. If you guys wanted realism, like I said, you'd be playing PES, not this, because PES has the slowness of next gen FIFA hypermotion without all the gimmicks. So why the hell are you guys not playing PES? That's right, you don't want realism. You don't want realism. You're either addicted to packs or you like the gimmicky features. That's why you're not playing PES. If you made it this far in the video, you're a legend. Type in the comments, cancel these nuts. But yeah, in summation, this game is not realistic. Old games were not unrealistic if we're comparing it to this game. PES or eFootball is the only realistic representation of football. So if that's what you want, play it. And if you realize that's not what you like, then understand that you don't like the realism aspect of FIFA 23, because realism is more than not being able to turn. And also, I never wanted realism either. I thought I made it abundantly clear that I mean, most people understood it, but you get the odd person there saying, I thought you wanted realism. No. I made it abundantly clear what I like, what I don't like, where I think realism has a spot, and where I think you need to bend the rules. At the end of the day, I want a fast-paced game with a bit of a realistic interpretation. That is, that you play a game that naturally has a meta where you want to pass and move and have the vision and the offensive AI, and you know, there's certain fundamentals like keeper marks the first post, like you want to push your opponents to the outside. You know, there's certain fundamentals that have a space, but then other things like nutmegs and that need to be limited, and rebounds need to be limited to help and aid the direction of a game that should be competitive friendly. Because, like I've said many times before, just because you're a casual player, at the end of the day, this is a 1v1 game, and when two people play, whether they're casual or not, at the end of the day, you need to create a game where the result is going to be dictated primarily by the decisions you make, and those decisions ideally are not gimmicky features that we have seen in the years implemented in football video games, but rather those decisions are more thought process, speed process, how fast you can make decisions, just sometimes the intricacies of I should have passed here and then down before going for the direct through ball, because that would have opened up 6 different scenarios. These tiny intricacies are what used to make FIFA fun, great, beautiful, and yeah, all that stuff. And they used to have a little bit of that, and they should have built on that, but instead they completely decimated that sort of beauty that I've shown you guys in previous videos and gone a completely different route, automated everything that should be a skill gap, and then added gimmicks on top of that to help create some sort of broken skill gap. The result is now a game where you see goals like this one. I remember this was a tweet, right? Someone said FIFA 23 is for the football purists, the passing, the movement, thinking 3-4 passes ahead to unlock a defense or find the space in the midfield. You're not able to just run around players flicking your left stick, and for that reason alone, I love it. The irony is that meta, what he described at the end, is not leaving, because then Kurt showed this text goal, and I mean, realism, like, you know, this is it. Like, the meta, it's an ISO game, like 22 bystanders as the guy with the ball goes in and out and back and forth. So when people say this game's realistic, like I said before, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about, right? And some people will like this goal, some people will not. But the point is, we have gone from an era where the vast majority of goals were passing plays to this. This is the vast majority. This is what a lot of people will go to, especially in the higher divisions. And so, I don't have anything else to say, boys. At the end of the day, people, when they talk about realism, a lot of time they're misrepresenting the word, they're misusing it. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.